Hello, this is Jacob Taylor for assignment 3, threads. To start off, I did the project on my own. Um, so I did this on me. I thought I found a decently clever way to do the assignments together, but um, I wasn't successful in the synchronize section. But I'm about to get into that. So first, I'm going to go over the code. Um, okay, so start off at the top of the list. We have the print me function that we went over in class. Uh, it's where it's a function we use when we're creating our threads. But to start off on my main, um, at the top we have the three variables where we want to store the IDs of our childs or of our children. These are the arrays and ints that I use for the for loops to create our threads. Then retval, something that we use for the um, thread joining process. Um, so after I initialize variables, I immediately go into my first fork and create a second process. I go ahead and check if it's 0. If not, it will drop from this if statement to this else. Um, and since this is the unsynchronized, it when it drops into the if statement, it will go ahead and print out that I'm child 1, and it will print out its ID and also its parent's ID. Then we immediately go into the for loop to create our threads, like we went over in class. Calls print me, and then immediately joins the threads to kill them. But if it immediately doesn't go into this because, say, the PID is not equal to 1, it goes into this big else statement. But the first part of it, yeah, so after the first fork, we come down to this else statement to fork a new process to create our second child. So at this fork is where we create our third or second child. Again, we have the same structure as before. So we check if it's 0. If it is, it goes ahead and prints I'm child 2, along with its ID and its parent's ID. So where we create our loops, it's exactly what we just did in the first child, just doing it in the second child. And then you do this process one more time with our third child. So we, again, else, and then we immediately fork inside of this else to create our third kid. And we store that in PID2. And then we go into our thread creation and joining process afterwards. And this else is what is after, yeah, it's inside of it. Yeah, and then this is where it just prints the parent's ID. And so that's that. I'm going to go ahead and run it real quick so you can see it. Um, so this is without synchronization, of course. So here we are. We can see where it says thread 1. I'm thread 1 of PID 195. That's also how I read it. I guess I thinking about it now. I could have just said to say 1, 2, 3, but I just wrote it in so that it prints the PID or the ID of the process that created the thread instead of the child like 1, 2, or 3. I just thought about that now. I apologize. But and then we can see it trying to join with 1, 2, and here it finally prints the second and third child. Then we see it joining. We get threads 1, and that's the end of it. And then, so my idea was the reason that I went with this structure, you know, it's projects 1 sync, was the way that I had this, my structure was already sort of bottomed out in the way that it starts with one fork and it just kind of goes down a ladder. And so my idea was that I only needed that I could use the structure as the asynchronous and use wait PID inside of the second child, the first child, and then the parent to help to stall them, because that's what I that's what I'm pretty sure, and I obviously read up on, just to be clear, that the wait PID stalls that process until you meet the requirements or the requirements in the arguments for wait PID. So the first place that I used it was here in the second child, and so I wrote wait PID, waiting on PID2, which is um, the third child's ID, and I had null 0 because when I was reading the documentation, that's what I was uh, ascertaining, was that that's what I needed to write, and I've tried other things, um, and just haven't gotten it to actually take off. And so my idea was I use wait PID here because it will go ahead and fork and create that other process, immediately drop into this if it is 0. It tells the user that so like it lets the user know that this second child has been created and that this is the ID and his parent's ID. And right after that line where it's notified that it was created, I would use wait PID to stall the process so that it would not drop into these for loops to create the threads. But I didn't use a wait PID in the third child because I obviously want that process to run first. And so I used this wait PID in the same exact slot or positioning in the first child process, where I use wait PID, waiting on the second child to finish, but I already print out that the child process is created, and then I had one more wait PID in the father, ideally so that the father waits to print himself um, and finish out before, or he waits until the first child has gone through and created its threads. Um, so that was my thinking, but I'll show you. I'm not sure if my idea is flawed with wait PID, or I'm misunderstanding it, or if I'm just getting the syntax wrong and it's not doing what I think that it's doing. That's what I'm unsure about. I'll come by office hours again or I'll shoot another email to you to ask about the wait PID, or maybe we'll go over it more in class. But I'm just because I feel as though I'm using wait PID correctly, but it's obviously not working the way that I'm expecting it to. So this is running from here. See, it doesn't actually wait. Nothing waits on its own. It's still running asynchronously, because if I just keep running it, it won't change at all. see, it still just it doesn't do anything. I guess it's a little bit harder to see it, but it still just runs all on its own. I guess this is also and I knew for the first project that you wanted them to repeat a lot of times so you could see it running, but I wasn't sure how to just run uh run like I could have put a while at the number, but I was I guess a little nervous about breaking it. But I guess I didn't think about that at first to just create a while loop with a number and then you just run through it a certain amount of times. But again, this is what the project works. It does what at least as the asynchronous works, that it creates 3 children, and then each of those childs creates and joins a thread. And yeah, so that's the end of wrong word. Here it is. That's the end of my assignment. Thank you. Have a good day.